Hello, welcome to Shamanism, Metaphysics, and Grace. I'm Lauren Hubele, and I'm here today with my mentor, Jyoti Wind. Jyoti, welcome.
Thank you, Lauren. Good to be here.
Jyoti, before I excitedly dive into today's topic, why don't you open this space for us?
Okay, thank you. Grandmothers and grandfathers of the East, we call to you. We ask for your presence and your insights. Grandmothers and grandfathers of the South, we call to you. We ask for your presence to hold this container and to place our feet in the right direction. Grandmothers and grandfathers of the West, healing spirits of the West, we call to you. We ask for your presence and healing possibilities. Grandmothers and grandfathers of the North, wisdom keepers of the North, we call to you. We ask for your presence and we thank you for any wisdom that comes out of this. Grandfather Sky, we ask for your presence, for your protection. Grandmother Earth, we ask for your mercy and compassion and your presence. And to that wise being inside all of us, may that being also be present. So I thought I would read something that is very short. I hear the bell of peace being struck again and again as war and greed fight over the spoils of human life. Can we quiet ourselves long enough to hear it?
Thank you, Jyoti. Mentioning quiet makes me think of the time that we're moving into. And I know you have a lot to share about the solstice and this time period moving into winter. I really wonder why and how it became something we honored.
I think when you look at the natural migration of peoples, and especially of animals, some hibernate, some lay low in the wintertime. It's the time of the dark, the light, in a sense, starts to come down into the roots of the trees. That's why the leaves fall off. And so there's a deepening of the light in the quiet time, in the dark time. And we naturally have a tendency, those who live with nature's cycles have a tendency to go inside and be more quiet, hole up in a nice armchair with a book and a cup of hot tea, and with snow maybe outside. And it's a time of natural quiet to go within and to get ready for the spring and the new ideas and the new growth and the new harvest time eventually. Most societies don't honor that. It's a busy shopping time, it's a busy time. And but there are people who feel it and acknowledge that within themselves.
Historically, how was this time honored?
Well, I think that people began, after the harvest time, they began their crafts, and that took them in order for the gift giving around Yule and solstice and Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and all the other holidays around that time. Um, and I think it was just that natural draw inside, like bears hibernate, and animals tunnel underneath the earth and into the earth, and bide their time until it's time to come back out again. Um, they're content in their burrows, so to speak. And humans used to be real content in their burrows. You know, they will have stored up the harvest in order to have enough to keep them through the winter, through the dark times. And when we come near the solstice point, the winter solstice point, it's like the darkest day, the longest day, and well, the shortest day, I guess. Maybe the longest day as
Longest
we
night.
think of daylight is in the summer. And so in the winter, it's the shortest day, but maybe the longest dark. And and so as we get closer to that, you know, we go the deepest in a sense we're going to go into that dark, into that unknown. I always saw black as a color of that which is yet to be formed. You know, some plants we put in the dark in order for roots to grow. So this is the time of going into the dark and allowing us to rest as deeply as possible and begin to prepare for spring. Okay. And so at the solstice, there's the rekindling of the light. All of a sudden, the sap in the deepest part of the roots starts to rise so that it's ready when spring comes, with the budding of leaves, with the small plants out of the ground, the shoots and things. But the winter solstice, as we go into that dark, dark time, there is also that rekindling of the light.
Hmm. Hmm. You know, as I'm listening to you, I can't help but think of how this shifted it happened when we moved from an agricultural society where we lived in tune with nature and its cycle, and we moved to a more industrialized way of life.
We had electricity, we had lights at night. I mean, yes, we had candle power and we had kerosene lamps before that, and we had candle wick of some kind of tallow as the migrations happened and people, nomadic people, followed the herds. And that takes us into the reindeer energy, because there were tribes that followed the reindeer herds in the northern Scandinavian, Nordic cultures. And so even then there was a honoring of nature's cycles, and then agricultural times where we honored nature's cycles, got up with first light and went to bed with the dark, usually or relatively soon after. And then the Industrial Revolution came and changed all of that, and commerce came in, and it was a busy time of buying and shopping and gift giving and all of that.
Sure. You know, Jyoti, this takes me back to some of our very first recordings, and you talked about the importance for us to recognize that we aren't separate from nature, and some of our greatest challenges we face emotionally and physically is because we have separated ourselves from those natural cycles.
Yeah, we aren't separate from nature, we are nature. Our bodies come from the earth, from her cells. You know, we are as much a part of this planet in its essence as we are anything else. Um, yeah, and since we have separated ourselves from that way of thinking, that way of being, that instinctual response to things, um, we don't honor ourselves and the seasons. We don't honor, okay, this is a time for deeper insight, this is a time of rest, real rest. Most modern cultures don't honor rest. You know, it's just this continual busyness and doing. um, and it makes me think of the myths of the northern climes, you know, like especially the deer mother. I love the myths of the deer mother around winter solstice because it honors the dark that we have just gone deeply into, and the return of the light, the rekindling of the light. Because in the myths, they're Nordic, they're Sami, they're all through the northern Germanic countries, that the deer mother would gather her female reindeers who kept their antlers all through winter, didn't shed them like the male reindeer did, and she would harness them. And it was the precursor to the Christian Santa Claus and Father Christmas. And she would gather the solar disk and they would fly into the heavens. There's many cultures who have this being in a sled led by reindeer flying up into the heavens. And she would give one of her head reindeer the solar disk in her antlers to flick into the night sky to be the return of the light, to be return of the sun. That would quicken nature and would quicken the light within people and within nature itself, within the basic tree roots and plant roots.
I love that myth. When you talk about the return to the light, you mentioned that the return to the light within. What are some of the ways we might honor that ourselves and in practices or rituals?
Well, there's a time for rest and a time for doing, and I think that honoring that light can be as simple as just having a candle flame, let's say. So I have a lit candle here, and I'm going to scoop that light from the flame and just put it over myself, just put it into myself, into my chakras, into my energy centers, and just envelop myself in that light, in that flame, with the express intention of rekindling the light in my own heart and rekindling the light of my spirit and rekindling the light of my ideas and intuition and my own thinking process. But ultimately, it's the rekindling of the light in my heart for this next cycle that will take us into spring.
Beautiful, beautiful. What's considered the solstice period? Is there a stretch of days or is this just on one day?
Well, there's cusps, you know, and it usually is one particular moment in time when the sun enters Capricorn. That's the moment of the winter solstice. And but several days before, several days after the winter solstice, if I'm not mistaken, it's the 21st, 22nd. I could have looked, I didn't. Because I want to talk about the solstice the next time we meet.
Okay, I'm
Yes.
jumping in.
Well, from an astrological point of view,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yes. But it is that week. So honoring the solstice, honoring that time of year, honoring that rekindling of the light within ourselves. This is where we are, finishing out our deep dive into the dark, and then filling ourselves with light and the light of spirit and the light of the season, and acknowledging that we, as part of nature, being nature, that this rekindling is happening in the trees and the earth itself and in the animal kingdom, that we also can participate and acknowledge our place in the scheme of things.
So for our listeners, we're about a week out from solstice right now. So
Yes.
considering setting yourself up for a little ritual that maybe you do each day or when you can remember, or even the eve of solstice.
Yes, just that simple imbuing yourself, taking that fire into yourself, taking that light into yourself.
Mm.
Very simple ritual.
Yeah. Where might someone learn more about the Deer Mother?
Um, there were a couple books that I don't remember offhand.
Okay.
Um, Talking about the reindeer spirit and the time of the solstice, and you can Google the reindeer mother. You can Google Ellen of the Ways with one L, Ellen of the Ways. You can look at some of the Sami myths
Okay.
around winter and solstice.
Okay. Okay.
There's not a lot that I found in printed form.
Okay. Okay. What else would you like to share about this theme?
Well, I really think it's a good time to cultivate one's inner life, whether it's through writing or meditation, because we're so pulled away from ourselves for the rest of the year with planting, let's say, if you're, in touch with nature in that way, with planting or travel and wildcrafting and things of that nature in the summer, and then the harvest time comes, and so we're pulled away from our inner life a lot in the course of the year, and this is a time to deepen that relationship with your own inner life. I find myself sometimes waking up in the middle of the night and I can't go back to sleep, and I found if I just sit up in bed and meditate for like 10 or 15 minutes, all my systems calm down. I can lay down and go back to sleep, which is a blessing instead of being awake for 2 or 3 hours, you know? And so I find myself meditating more.
Hmm. Well, it seems like that would be very supported during this time, that if you've never developed a meditation practice, this would be a good time that the energy in the season would support your movement inward.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, it's a natural pull, a natural draw to go inside. Even if all day you're checking off your Christmas list of gifts and things to do and have tos and all of that, that energy is still there in the background and can whisper to you and summon you, to come inside a bit.
Yeah, I find, in fact, because our days are very hectic right now, that even that starting my day with that 10 minutes, I can tap back into what that felt like all day
Yes,
long.
yes. And to me, the meditation is tapping into who you know yourself to be, you know, and then um, it's like the world can have you the rest of the day, or your family can have you the rest of the day. But just that initial check in with yourself and remembering who you really are, and then doing what you do as a human being for the rest of the day.
Great, great. Anything else coming up?
No, I think that's it.
Yeah, good, Jyoti. I'm very curious about what you'll be sharing next week. It's tempting to just pull us right into that. So I want to invite our listeners to come back and share and listen in next week, and we can look at this in an astrological perspective as well.
Yes, yes, because the winter solstice is like the birth of the next quarter of the year. And so the chart for the um, winter solstice will give us an idea of what the next quarter of the year wants.
Beautiful. I think we're all wanting to know that.
Yeah, new year coming. Yes,
Yeah, great. Jyoti, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
you're very welcome, Lauren. Thank you.